All right, so it looks like we're even now. So I'll jump in. For those who just joined, my name's Evan. I head up the commercial team for BuzzSumo, and we're really excited to have Craig here today, who is the founder of the Agency Coach, not only someone who coaches agencies, but someone who operated and ran an agency as well, and was able to take that from a small startup and then have a really successful exit with selling to WPP. And since then, Craig has focused on coaching other agencies on how to grow and scale their business. So we're really excited to have Craig here today. But before I hand it over to him, I got to do it. I have to talk about BuzzSumo for just a minute. Yeah, I'm sure most of you are familiar with what BuzzSumo is. For those of you who aren't, it's pretty straightforward. You're all-in-one PR and creative content solution. So there's a lot you can do in BuzzSumo. And it all starts with data. We have the best data in the industry. But the last thing we want to do is hand you a bunch of data and say, here you go analyze this, because we know people are busy, especially these days. Everyone's wearing multiple hats. Teams are small. You have to do a lot of different things. Our goal is to use this data that we have to help you do your job better and faster. So if you're manually scrolling through social media to stay on top of trends in your space, you're spending a ton of time that you could be using to do something else. And our trending tool is going to do that for you. We will automatically surface what's trending so you can stay ahead of your competitors and on point and on topic. If you're manually going through media mentions or using a tool like Google Alerts, we're going to give you such a more powerful tool and a really easy to use interface. They're monitoring alerts. It's going to save you a ton of time and again, keep you ahead of what everyone else is doing. If you're manually searching for journalists and managing a journalist database in Excel, stop doing that. Try BuzzSumo. We have our brand new journalist database. We have hundreds of thousands of profiles. We break down journalists by topic, by location, by what's in their bio, and we give you their contact information too, so you can go and build those relationships and stay on top of journalists as they move around, because it's pretty rare for journalists to stay at one outlet these days. Most journalists write for multiple outlets at one time. We're gonna help you keep track of all that. And there's tons more we can do in BuzzSumo. You don't have to take our word for it. We have all these great badges from G2, but I think better to look at is, real feedback from people in the industry. Some of these are people we worked with in the past on projects, but my favorites are the ones that are just unsolicited great feedback like we have from Rand here. So if you haven't tried BuzzSumo, go to our website and sign up for a trial at buzzsumo.com. We'll give you a free 30-day free trial. You can go and play around with the tool before you have to commit to it. So with that being said, Craig, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, magic. Let me get my slides up here.
While Craig's doing that, actually, just one quick piece of housekeeping I almost forgot to mention. We're going to save some time at the end of the call for Q&A. So if any questions, please pop them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. I'll make sure we get over to it. We're going to send out a recording of this call sometime before the end of the week. So if you signed up for the call, we'll make sure we send you a recording of it. And in the chat box, you'll see Eleanor and Louise from the BuzzSumo team. They will just be answering any questions you pop into the chat as well.
Magic. Thank you. Thanks, Evan. Thank you, everyone, for joining. As Evan said, my name's Craig Rodney. I'm a marketing agency coach. I help small to medium agencies to grow, scale, and position their businesses to exit. I founded, grew, and eventually sold Africa's largest social media agency. So I've kind of been through it all. I've learned all the hard lessons. I spent way too many years stuck in the small agency space. So I think I've got some fairly good insights, and I've helped a number of agencies over the years now kind of grow from strength to strength, and a number of them to exit. So the thing I hear most when I start working with clients is there has to be an easier way to make money. I think most agencies around the world tend to share the same pain points within this industry. There's a lot of pressure on us from clients. They have an abundance of options of agencies that they can choose from. And so we feel a lot of price pressure. It's difficult to differentiate or to find a true niche within the marketing space, because everyone has access to the same tools now. And so most agencies find themselves struggling, especially when you kind of start, you get through the small phase and they get stuck there. The one thing I do want to say though is as far as business models are concerned, there definitely are easier ways to make money. But considering that agencies have no barrier to entry, you could start an agency straight away. You generally don't need capital. You don't need a degree. Anyone can walk in and start an agency, get up and running, and start selling to clients. So considering there's almost no barriers to entry, it's actually a really good business. And if you get the things right that you need to get right to prioritize profit, to prioritize growth, these businesses can make a phenomenal amount of money. A lot of them don't, but it doesn't mean that you can't. And so one of the things I'm going to talk about today is the keys to unlocking growth in a small to medium agency. Not everyone wants to grow. And I want to go on the record of saying that there are a lot of agencies that I've worked with who are quite comfortable remaining the same size that they are. They're just trying to get better and better at what they do so that they can unlock more profit. But not everyone wants to grow. The problem with staying a small agency is that it could be a brilliant business as far as creating money for you. Like you could yield good profits every single year. And as the owner of the agency, those dividends will do well for you. But if you remain small, it's often that business is not an asset. It's not something that you can sell. If you walked away, it would vanish. And so from an asset creation point of view, converting a small business that makes you a salary and pays you dividends into a business that has asset value beyond you, and it's something that you could potentially sell in the future, that often requires growth. It requires getting out of that phase where you are the key to everything. So there's 7 things we're going to talk through today. These are kind of the key principles and the foundational principles for getting out of that small phase and growing from strength to strength. I'm going to talk through each of them carefully, but we're going to go through escaping survival mode, stuck at small, the theory of stock, buying back time, always be upgrading, leads means revenue, and caring is not an emotion. So we're going to jump straight in. So let's start at number 1, escaping survival mode. So pretty much every small agency understands what the survival mode is like. Survival mode as in, we got to get through every single month. It feels like the same. It feels like Groundhog Day. We're constantly chasing for work. We're constantly chasing for payments. We're trying to cover salaries, and we get into this grind. And the grind feels endless a lot of the time. A lot of the agencies that I start coaching with, the owners feel fairly helpless. They feel quite stuck. A lot of them have been doing this for a number of years, hoping that simply doing it for a long period of time will get them out of survival mode. And unfortunately, time has nothing to do with whether you escape survival mode or not. You actually have to structurally approach it in a way that sees you escape. So most agencies start without capital. And I always kind of joke with people and I say, when you start an agency, you have a surplus of time, but a scarcity of money. So you don't really have money, but you've got lots of time. So we throw time at everything, right? We over deliver for clients. We do everything ourselves. Instead of paying anyone to do stuff, we go like, well, I don't have money to pay, so I'll just do it. We become these kind of all-rounders. We do everything within the agency. And often it's the right thing to do, right? If you don't have the cash, paying with time is the correct way to do it. But survival mode, if you look at it from like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, all of your decision making is based around making it to tomorrow, right? It's food, shelter, safety, security. It's all the basic human needs or the basic needs of a business. Your decision making is structured in such a way that you will discount, you will over deliver, you will over promise, you'll take on clients that aren't the right fit for you. You will do all the work yourself. You will do everything that you possibly can to be able to make it to next month. Now, those decisions are correct. If you're in survival mode, survival-based decisions are correct. Rather survive than die. The problem is those decision frameworks, the decisions that allow you to survive also trap you there, right? So using your time to solve problems means that you eventually get to a point where you have no time, and then you're stuck. Being the central cog in everything means that no piece of work can go out if it doesn't go through you, and again, that you get stuck. Hiring, when we're in survival mode, when we hire the cheapest people we possibly can because we don't have that much cash. The problem is in my experience, most employees cost the same. We just pay them with different currencies. So you can get a junior and you can pay them a small amount of cash, but you're going to have to pay them a lot of time. So in order to get full value out of that junior employee, you'll pay them a small dollar-based salary or whatever the salary is, and then you're going to pay a lot of time to be able to make sure that they can deliver good value to your clients. If you had a lot of money, you would just hire a senior person. The best thing about senior people is or highly talented senior people, is you can just pay them with money. Often they need the smallest amount of time and they can go off and do their jobs. but everyone's going to cost the same. It's just how you pay them that changes. When you're in survival mode, you tend to pay with time, and it traps you there because you cannot get the best out of that employee. You're stuck in the work. So escaping the survival mode requires changing your decision frameworks. Instead of paying for things with time, you've got to start paying with things with money. You've got to hire good people. You've got to stop discounting on work. You've got to make sure that you scope properly. You've got to be willing to lose a pitch in order to not win a piece of work that doesn't allow you to escape. But the decisions that you use to survive are the ones that trap you there. Okay, on to number two, this thing of stuck at small. So I said, I was a small agency for about 8 years. We were only 5 people. I thought we were great. I thought we were a phenomenal agency, but we were great, but we were small. We had these really cool clients like Google and Semantic and Oracle and these well-known brands, but there was only 5 of us. And it cost me dearly, right? It was the biggest mistake that I made in my entire 15-year agency career, was staying small, was being stuck at that small place. I didn't know how to escape. It wasn't I wasn't consciously going, I'm happy to be this size. The mistake I'd made is that I had made myself the central point of everything. And it's probably just like a big ego thing, but I always said to people, it's my name on the door. I can't send out a piece of work unless I've checked it, unless I'm 100% sure that it's good. And so we couldn't scale beyond my own personal time capacity, right? I was busy. As I said, we had a lot of really cool clients, but I didn't have enough time and I didn't have enough money because we weren't charging correctly, and I was still having to pay all these salaries. So now I was stuck in a situation where I had no time and I had no money, and I felt paralyzed. I didn't know which way to escape, and I didn't have either of those resources to be able to throw at problems. But the biggest, as I said, the biggest sticking point for me in this small thing was I couldn't scale beyond my own capacity. When I eventually sold the business a number of years later, the sale of our business was preceded by a merger. So myself and a good friend of mine, he also had an agency. We merged our 2 businesses. He was small but growing. I was small but stagnant. And we did the same valuation model on each. And when we put them together, I had a smaller shareholding than he did because I wasn't growing, and it impacted the value of the asset that I brought to the table. So we merged the businesses. I became a smaller shareholder than Mike. And eventually, when we sold onto WPP, the difference between the shareholding that I had got, that I'd earned using a flat, stagnant small business, and let's say if I'd gotten to 50%, so if Mike and I'd become 50-50 owners, just the difference between those two was about a $750,000 in the valuation. And so by not figuring out how to unlink myself from the business and take myself out of the work, cost me a significant amount of money. Thankfully, I did figure it out, and we were able to grow the business massively, and we were able to grow the business rapidly. We kind of went from 16 people to 100 in a couple of years. Eventually, it paid off. But at that early stage, staying small was crippling for me. It was stuck. I couldn't scale beyond my own capacity. And I have a feeling a lot of agency owners, a lot of the guys that are listening are sitting there going, yeah, that's me. So one of the rules that I insist on with every client that I work with is you have to separate the person who does the selling from doing the work. So the person who sells cannot be responsible for doing any work. And it sounds really lazy, right? But put it this way. If every time you win a new piece of revenue, every time you win a new client, you personally have to put hours into that project, eventually you're going to run out of hours. You're going to be sitting there going, hey, I have no more time. Like, I can't work more nights and I can't work more weekends. And so you stop selling, right? Suddenly selling and winning clients becomes painful. It becomes something that makes your life worse. And if winning new revenue, if growing your business is a painful thing, causes actual pain in your life and makes your life worse, you're going to stop. You're immediately going to self-sabotage any opportunities, and you're going to pull back and you're going to go, nope, I can't work harder. I can't take on more work. And essentially, when you're in that situation, you're kind of like this, you're basically the glorified freelancer. You may have a lot of employees around you, But if that business cannot scale past your time availability, which is a finite resource, then it's gonna stick there. So the challenge I want to give to you, or the first challenge on this talk, I want you to look at your business, and I want you to imagine a highly qualified, highly competent person taking over the running of your agency, right? So a senior person that you trust, and you know they will do a better job than you would of doing all the work. And for 6 months, all you had to do was win new business. You got to win a client, you get to put the brief, you get to arrive at the door, you hand the brief over to someone and you leave. You don't actually have to do any work. You can go on a holiday, you can do whatever you want. But if all you had to do in your business was win revenue and you didn't have to do the work, your revenue would grow immediately. All of you are sitting there going, well, yeah, I could sell like crazy. It would be amazing. And you realize that your revenue growth is hindered by you, by your attachment to doing the work, by your own limitation of the time that you have available. So getting out of that small phase means getting yourself out of the execution side of your business and making sure that your time is not tied to the size of the work that you do. Oh, got to jump through. Okay, so number 3, we're going to jump into the theory of stock. When I started my business, I wasn't a marketer. I wasn't an agency person. I was an economist, and I started a marketing agency. I was never passionate about the work. I was always happy to kind of, like hire good people and then have this like strict oversight over it. But the one thing I understood really on is that agencies are a stock business. It's the same as a retail business. If you've got a shoe shop, it's exactly the same. The difference is our stock is units of time. So we buy units of time from employees and from freelancers, and we mark those units up and we sell it on to our customers. It's a very simple supply and demand business with a markup in between. In order to be able to manage your business to the highest level of profitability, you have to be able to understand your stock and where it goes and how you use it and how you apportion it, right? But ultimately, at the beginning of each month, you can open your warehouse doors and you look inside, and every single employee will represent a floor to ceiling stack of 1-hour boxes, and it'll be design, writing, client service, et cetera. And if you have 6 hours of each employee a day available to sell, then you're going to have 126 boxes of 1 hour. And you know what those cost. Every single box has a cost price on it. It's that person's salary divided by their hours. And if you sold every one of those boxes at the highest possible retail price, you will be printing money. Like quite literally, it is an unbelievably effective way of making money. The hassle is most agencies aren't. Most agencies have massive stock loss. The difference between the retail value, potential retail value of all your stock in the warehouse at the beginning of the month, and the gross profit at the end of the month, when you look at, well, how much money did we make selling that stock? There's a massive difference. And that difference is your stock loss. And you've got to attack that stock loss ferociously. You've got to interrogate it and attack it. The main causes of stock loss are over delivery. So you feel nervous that you have to keep this client, and so you just throw tons of stock at the client to keep them happy. If you discount, or if you underspec or under scope a project, and you end up like, that's another problem for stock loss. If you have inefficient employees who take 6 hours to do a 2-hour job, it's another cause of stock loss. But there are a lot of pressures on a time-based business and a lot of things that can cause stock loss. But you can't be blind to it, because if you want to recover the stock loss, you have to know what's causing it. So we have to look at our businesses as stock-based businesses. We have to track that stock. We have to understand the pricing of the stock of each person. We have to know who is buying it, who's paying for it, who's getting free stock. How do we minimize our stock loss? As much as I say it's a great business, it really is a phenomenal way of making money if you get this right. And I got it right for a number of years, and it made me a lot of money, which is why I do back this business model. One of the hassles with time as stock is that it has 2 really tough criteria. Firstly, it's fragile, and secondly, it's perishable. So the fragility of stock means that it gets sick, and it gets tired, and it gets upset, and sometimes it underperforms, and sometimes it has to go on leave. And so it's a very fragile stock. When our employees are performing well, they're amazing and they're incredible, but they're not machines. We can't treat them like machines. We can't expect outputs like machines because they're human beings. So we have to accept that there's some level of discrepancy in their ability to deliver. There is fragility in there, in the stock. And then we can't, and the other thing is we can't sell yesterday's stock. So like hotel rooms, once that day has passed, you can't go back in time and sell yesterday's hours. And so if you haven't sold your allotment of hours in a day, in a week, in a month, you now can't sell it. That money is lost forever. And so it's completely perishable. Those two factors make or add complexity into the business model. Once you figure out how to manage them, though, you can become highly profitable, and it can be a money-making machine. You buy stock at a reasonable price, you mark it up, you sell it on to your clients, and if you want to grow, you just buy more stock and have more people wanting to buy it. Really, the moment you look at this business in that simplistic level, you'll figure out how to make a lot of money doing this. Okay, onwards to point 4, buying back time. So I mentioned earlier, as the owner, our time is often linked into the business. And generally what I'm not a big fan of is when people say, oh, I need to make time, or I need to find time. And you can't make time and you can't find time. I've never seen anyone actually accomplish either of those things. But what you can do and what you must do is buy time. Like I said, this is a stock-based business. We buy time for a low amount and we sell it for a high amount. The same applies to your time. If you look at what you're doing and you do a list of everything that you do in a month, guarantee there is a lot of tasks and a lot of functions in your role that you currently do that you could pay someone else to do for significantly less than you could make selling that time onto someone else. So the idea is to buy back time. And as I said, we've got to stop saying find time and make time, because they're misleading. You buy time. You go, I need 20 hours into my life to work on proposals, or to fix this part of my business, or to go and do something. I need 20 hours back to go hiking and find my happiness. Whatever it is, if you need time back into your day, you buy it. It's pretty simple. You find out, what can I get someone else to do for significantly less than that time is worth if I sold it onto someone else, and you go out and buy that time back. What you need to focus on through this growth phase is only doing what only you can do. For most agency owners, the only thing that they can do that almost no one else can do is get potential customers to believe in you. It's that the idea that you sell trust, that your customers back you and believe that you and your team will be able to deliver. And so most owners, as they grow, their roles split and they become responsible for money in and money out. And those two focus areas, they can spend a lot of time doing if they're able to remove themselves from everything in between. And everything in between is the execution of work. And thankfully, there are a lot of people out there who you can pay good money to, and they will be really good at executing on the work. For the most part, if you can figure out what is your single biggest contribution, or your top 3 biggest contributions into your business, and you focus on those and you buy back all of your time from all those other things, the money you make by focusing on the things that you're really good at will way more than cover the cost of buying back your time. I've put in here this thing around cascading waterfalls. It's a bit of a sidetrack, but it's critical that I say it. When it comes to buying back time, it starts getting very expensive quite quickly. We start realizing that a lot of the things that we're doing will cost us a lot of money if someone else does it. And one of the tricks that I used to use was this principle of cascading waterfalls, where I would go to an intern, I would hire an intern for a small amount of money. And I would say to the intern, or I'd say to a junior, I would say, you've got to give 30% of your work, 30% of your work that you don't need to do, that an intern can do. I want you to hand that down. And then I'd go to a mid and I would say, okay, listen, the junior below you has 30% capacity. So I want 30% of your job, the 30% that you think a junior could do that isn't a good use of your time, you're going to pass that down. And then I'd go to a senior and I'd say, the guy below you has got capacity. Whatever it is that you're doing that's not a good use of time, you hand that down. And when they do that, and they're very excited to hand over work. And then once that's done, then you get to say to the senior, okay, you've got a lot of capacity at the moment and I really need help. If you're up for the challenge, if you're keen to take on more responsibility, these are the areas where I could really use some help. And for the most part, if you've helped them free up the time and the capacity to take on that responsibility, they'll rise to the occasion. And so often you can buy back large chunks of your time, not by hiring another senior, but by actually hiring a junior or hiring an intern. So that's the cascading waterfalls. The trick, the central trick around buying back time is this thing that I call high functioning laziness. I've always been described at a number of points in my life as being lazy, and I always thought it was a bit of an insult. So I put high functioning in front of it to describe myself as high functioning lazy, just to take the sting out of the insult a little bit. But I was always fairly lazy, but unbelievably successful. And the truth is, because when I figured this out, I realized that if you focus on stopping, delegating, and building as 3 tactics towards getting time back into your life, you will have all the time back that you need. So stop doing the things that you definitely don't need to do. Delegate every single thing that someone else can do, you're going to delegate, and build as many tools and procedures and structures and lists and whatever it is that you can build to create efficiencies and to create repeatable work into the future. So you build something today that saves you an hour every day going forwards. Invest in that build. But if you stop, delegate, and build, and you focus on those, you'll be able to buy back a significant amount of time. Okay, now for number 5, always be upgrading. This rule of mine came quite late in my agency career, and it came through a fairly painful patch. So we'd built the business, and I'd made the mistake of building a significant part of the business on the shoulders of an employee who was mind-blowingly good. John was probably one of the best employees we ever had. I loved him to bits. He was phenomenal. But we got to a point where I realized there was this massive risk around having John as the kind of the shoulders upon which this entire department was riding. And John resigned. And it was a bit of a shock, and it caused massive panic and massive anxiety in me, because I thought this whole side of the business was going to collapse. I was happy for John. He'd been offered this amazing position, international position. So we kind of, I put on my brave face and I celebrated him leaving, but I didn't know how to handle it, and I didn't know what to do. And so we came up with this rule around always be upgrading. And what we did is, the only way we could make it okay that John resigned was to hire the best person possible. Like literally, we went, who is an upgrade from John? No matter what it costs, we did not care, like blank check hire. Who can we get who is better than John? And it was hard, but we ended up finding someone, and we had to pay for that person. But when they came on, we kind of went, well, I'm quite glad John left, because if he hadn't have left, we wouldn't have had this guy. And so we realized that when we created this rule, when we lost good people, we put a massive focus on hiring someone better than them. And it just kind of took the pain away, and it made them leaving a slightly better experience. Because what you have to accept is agencies, we evolve, we grow, we kind of shed clients, we shed employees, and we grow all the way through this process. So you kind of have to accept you probably will lose every client, and you'll lose every existing employee over a long enough period of time, but you'll win more clients and you'll hire more employees. And the idea is, as you move through these phases, you want to be upgrading. You want to be hiring employees for the clients that you want. As I said, like, you want to think about that stock model. If you want to win a high-end client, and that high-end client is only interested in top-tier stock, in like the best stock available, you're not going to win the client unless you have that stock. So you have to hire the people before you get the clients. And it's terrifying. And often it's not possible from a financial perspective. But whenever and however you can make it to be possible, you should be hiring people above the clients that you have to attract clients that you want. So that's the main thing. When you replace clients, when you win clients, you want to be looking at replacing instead of naturally just growing. So as I said, my business partner, Mike, and I, we built this thing called the love-hate matrix. And every single time we won a new client, if it was a significant piece of work that would require an investment in hiring lots of people, we always looked at our existing clients and we put every one of our clients through this love-hate matrix, because hiring good people is quite difficult and it's quite expensive. We would rather fire a bad client to make space for a great client than add a great client onto a business that is carrying a bad client. So we use this love-hate matrix to kind of decide who are a good client, who do we love, who do we hate, who do we want to keep, who do we want to fire. And fairly often when we won clients, we didn't have to go on a big hiring spree because we just got rid of a really bad client, bad payer, or an abusive client, or whatever it may be, and just took those people and put them onto this great client. And you tend to get the best results that way. And the final point around this kind of this mentality around always being upgrading is to always be hiring. And when I say always be hiring, what I mean is you don't have to always be pulling the trigger and sending job offers, but you should always be in the hiring process. A lot of growth in small agencies actually centers around finding the right people. And as much as it is finding clients, probably half of the clients that I work with have less trouble winning new clients than they do finding new and talented employees. So the search for skills is not always the easiest thing. But we know when you look at your revenue pipeline, you look at the opportunity to grow revenue, you can't win a client and then start looking for good talent, because good talent, like really good people, takes a long time to find. They're not sitting often, they're not sitting waiting for you to offer them jobs. You've got to hunt them down, you've got to court them and woo them and eventually try and win them into your business. And that takes a lot of time to find that talent. So what you should be doing is, the key roles within your business that if you grow, you're going to need more of. You're going to need more client service people. You're going to need more designers or ad specialists or whatever it is that you're going to need in your business. You already know that. You should be interviewing and advertising and interviewing for all of those roles over an extended period of time. And when you find really good people, often if you've started early, they'll coincide with when you have clients coming in. If you find someone that you cannot pass on, but you don't necessarily have the revenue yet, often it's worth taking the risk, pulling that trigger, which is hiring before you have the clients, and that person will help you win the clients that are due at that person's level. But this approach to skills has to always be upgrading. As a small business, there are infinitely more potential customers out there than existing customers. And we often get way too over-focused on worrying about existing customers because we're told you've got to retain, you've got to keep these clients happy, you've got to, we're so afraid of having a leaky bucket that we become paranoid about it and we just focus internally. And again, it's another thing that makes us get stuck. You've got to be okay with the fact that your bucket will probably have leaks in it. You're going to lose clients, you're going to lose employees along the way. But as long as you can upgrade as you go, you're better off every single year. So focus on that, always be upgrading. Okay, point number 6, and these are getting more and more towards my favorite. So point number 6, leads means revenue, is one of the things I'm absolutely most passionate about. If you want to grow, you need more revenue. That's standard, right? It kind of goes without saying. You have to win more revenue. It's winning more revenue from existing clients. It's winning more clients and unlocking greater revenue through new clients. But the first thing that people weirdly get wrong about revenue is that revenue is not an action. It's not something you can go out and do, right? You can't go out and you can't go like, oh guys, I'm going to go and do 10 revenues today and wish me luck, right? It doesn't work like that. You got to realize revenue is a consequence. It's a natural side effect. It's a consequence, not the action. So much like if you look at weight loss, which is something most people understand intimately, weight loss is not an action. You can't go out and do 10 weight losses, but what you do is you realize that weight loss is a consequence. The action for weight loss is generally just 4 words: run more, eat less, right? Or an extended version of that. But if you want to lose weight, you have to work out what are the actions that you can do that have weight loss as a natural consequence, right? There are a lot of other natural consequences to running, like happiness, health, or bad knees in my case, but you have to figure out what is the action that best leads to this consequence. With revenue, the action that best leads to consequence is lead generation. It is an action. It is something you can go out and do. You can mine your networks. You can do PR and you could speak at events, and you can do everything. There's an infinite list of tactics that you can do. But you have to accept that all of your energy must be on lead gen, because once you have a qualified lead, and by qualified lead, I mean they are aware of who you are and they've expressed a need. So qualified lead generally meets those two criteria. They know who you are and they've expressed a need. If you have a steady stream of meetings with companies who know who you are and have expressed an interest in what you do, you're set for life. Like, you already know how to close those leads. Every single one of you exists because you are capable of converting a lead, qualified lead, into revenue. So that's not always something that you need to focus on. If you've got bad conversion rates, we'll focus on it. But for the most part, you already know how to do that. What you need is leads, and you need qualified leads. I often get asked by agencies, like, or they get told, we're looking for a salesperson. And it's something I challenge, not to say that it doesn't work. It just doesn't work often. But I always say to them, what do you want the salesperson to do? Because if you want them to generate leads, that's a marketer. You need a marketing person who knows how to get potential customers to know who you are and to express at least an interest. But that's a marketer's job. And then once you've got the lead, having the meeting, taking the brief, doing the proposal, if your salesperson can do that, phenomenal. But more often than not, in a small to medium agency, that's you, that's the owner who's going to be doing that. So there isn't really space. If you have a powerful marketer who knows how to mine leads and knows how to get people to express an interest, and you've got a person who can do proposals and sell trust and win revenue, then you've got a good mix. But if you want more revenue in the future, the action that leads to revenue is always going to be lead gen. You need to invest, just as one of these notes is, you need to invest in creating transactional content. I know that it feels overdone, but by transactional content, what I mean is you're creating something that someone will register for. Okay, that someone shows an interest in. They go, oh, that looks quite interesting. I'm willing to transact. I'm willing to give my name and email address in order to receive this piece of content. That's transactional content. You know, in my agency, we always had this rule that the only content we'll create is content good enough that people would pay for it. And if they're willing to pay for it, when we give it away for free, they will flood in. And so we invested heavily in creating these high value pieces of content and highly specific, like a high level of like relevance to our target audiences. And they would flood in, they would come in and download these resources, and they'd register for our events and our webinars and all this kind of stuff. And that's it. They would transact. They would go, this is my name and email address, and I'm interested in this topic. So they're expressing an interest. And often they would go, oh, I have a need. Like, I'm actually looking for someone who can deliver these services. And so our lead generation within our business was so strong that we didn't ever really need sales. All we ever needed to do was try and keep up with the number of sales meetings that we were having, because there were so many people coming forwards going, oh, I read your ebook, or I attended this, or I did this, I did this. So that's transactional content. I don't believe small to medium agencies should do marketing. You know, I don't really think, you know, you're not Coca-Cola. You don't need like top of shelf or top of mind awareness. You need leads. You don't need to speak at a conference. You need 3 people saying to you, hey, can we set up a meeting? Like, I would take three meetings over speaking to a conference of people. So we always want, whatever it is that we do, if we do get invited to a conference, you go, that's fantastic, I'm happy to talk, but can you give me the database? Or can you email everyone and go, this is a resource that they can download, etc. And then the final point here around leads is you have to track and manage your leads and manage that funnel. Because targeting revenue by saying, so let's say you go, I want to win $1 million more revenue this year. Based on your average deal size, you could actually reverse engineer a revenue target back into a number of signatures. So you go, well, in order to get $1 million extra revenue, we're probably going to need 20 deals. And you go based on our average, and you go, okay, cool. Well, if we need 20 signatures, how many leads do we need? Normally, how many leads does it normally take to get one signature? And you go, it takes 10 leads to get one signature. Okay, cool. You're going to need 200 leads over the year, and you'll get your $1 million in revenue. So you can brief your marketing team and go, I need 200 qualified leads. But 200 qualified leads, with all things being equal, is worth $1 million to your business. And if you want the $1 million, you've got to go and target the lead. So you've got to track and target that as you go, as aggressively and as clearly as you can. Okay, number 7, which is a very close one to me, because this is outside, besides being stuck for many years as a small agency, this was the next biggest mistake. And it was the thing that saw me end up leaving my business after I'd sold it, is caring is not an emotion. For almost all of us, emotion plays a big part in business. It's difficult not to. It's tough industry. You know, we deal with some challenging clients, some challenging situations. It feels like an always on type of thing. Our, you know, emails always blowing up, phones always blowing up. Clients don't always treat us the best. You know, we don't garner the same level of respect as lawyers if you're a marketing person, etc. So emotion comes into play a lot here. But what I want to clarify with everyone is that caring is not an emotion, right? And I'm going to give you an example. I want you to imagine that you're going in for quite a hectic surgery. Like, it's something that's quite scary. You're lying on the bed, you're being prepped, you know, you've got the blanket and the drip in and everything like this. And you meet the surgeon comes to talk to you about what's going to happen. And they're doing a kind of a pre-op explanation. So my question is, the first question is, when you meet the surgeon, do you want that surgeon to care about your life? And the answer almost certainly is, well, yes, absolutely. Of course, I want that surgeon to care. So my next question is, do you want the surgeon to be emotional? And the response should be, hell no. Like, of course I don't want, you know, emotional surgeons' hands like twitch like this, right? Like, it's just, no one wants an emotional surgeon, but we all want our surgeon to care. So now we go, okay, cool. So caring and emotion are two different things. So what does caring mean? And you realize that caring on a surgeon's, in respect of a surgeon, is the execution of a predefined, tested set of actions that they know will result in the best possible outcome. So they arrive early, they make sure that they've got the best team, they make sure that everything is clean and sterilized, they make sure they have all the equipment, they make sure they have backups in place, they make sure that they scrub in properly, they make sure that they did their practice, they make sure that the anesthetist is sober, they make sure a lot of things before conducting a surgery. It's the same thing with pilots. Pilots aren't emotional. No one wants an emotional pilot, but pilots care deeply. They do like 100 pre-flight checks. That is an act of caring. And when it comes to your business, if you're emotional, it kind of sets this fog in place. You become overwhelmed and it's difficult to see what to do. And the action is the thing that clears the fog. So if you care about your work and if you care about your business and if you care about where you're going with it, I want you to understand that caring is not about being emotional about it. Being emotional is not you showing how much you care. Showing how much you care is about focusing on the action and going, these are the actions that we need to do to do this, to achieve this, to fix the situation, to accomplish this goal. But caring is all action-based. It is not emotional. And I was way too emotional for way too many years. And it took a massive toll on me personally. And it took a massive toll on my mental health because I was so wrapped up in the business. And when I got to a point that I realized my mistake, I became the most efficient person on the planet because I just went like, I'm not emotionally invested anymore. If I care about something, that's not an emotional response. It's an action-based response. I'm like, how can I fix this? What are the actions I need to do? So if you guys are feeling like you're getting emotional, please just sit down and go, okay, cool. What are the actions? What needs to be done? Before I end off, I'm going to just do a quick final thought to kind of wrap everything up, because a lot of people go like, okay, cool. This is great, Craig, but where do I start? And we've all heard of a downward spiral. All of us have experienced a downward spiral in our agencies. You know, it's a bad piece of work. You're under pressure from clients. They don't want to pay you that much. you can't hire good people because they're not paying you very well. And so you hire bad people. Those bad people do more bad work. And then you have to redo it 6 times. And then you're over and you're working nights and you feel yourself kind of going in this death spiral, right? At the center of an upward spiral, if you want your agency, if you want to flip it and you get your agency going into an upward spiral, all of the 7 things that I've spoken about, you have to focus on. But at the center of it is a very simple thing. And I am going to oversimplify this, but you have to charge correctly. If you aren't charging correctly, if you aren't marking up your stock, if you aren't making decent margins on the work that you do, you cannot fix anything. Revenue and profit solves a lot of problems, because when you're making profit, you have money to use to throw at problems, because you don't have time anymore, right? Your time is gone. You invested it all when you started, right? But you have to have money. And so if you can charge correctly and you don't take on work below your rate and you make a good profit out of that work, you can hire good people. You can buy back your time. You can invest in transactional content. You can invest in growing this business. But at the center of the upward spiral is charging correctly. And if you can't get that right, you're going to really, really struggle with everything else. That's me. Guys, thank you very much. Those are my sites, agencytoexit.com and craigrodney.com, and my email, craig@craigrodney.com. I see that there's a lot of chat going on there. Evan, have you been kind of keeping track around questions, etc.?
I'm sure Eleanor and Louise have, but if you do have questions, please pop them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. That's the easiest place for us to go and find them. Yeah, and Craig, that was awesome. I took a lot away. I don't work in an agency. I took a lot away from that, just in a general business sense. That was
Sorry, there was quite a bit. Like it was quite a bit. So I apologize if it was a lot.
Well, the good thing is we're sending out a recording, because I think this is one you're going to want to probably go back to, right? And you put a lot of in there and awesome nuggets. I love the part about like you're going to pay everyone the same, like whether that's time or money, and it's not always realistic you can spend the money, but I've been there, I've done that. It's a good lesson to learn. Yeah,
I mean, listen, like generally, as I said, like, our people are the business, right? You can't escape that. I made far fewer mistakes hiring brilliant people than I did hiring average people. And that's sorry, should I say skills? Because everyone's brilliant, but I mean, from a skills perspective, right? Like a highly skilled person, once or twice it didn't work, but for the most part, it was always like, if you want it done right, if you want, you hire a good person.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that. It's a lesson you got to keep learning. I think it's always tempting to not do that. So it's very apt. Craig, do you mind if I share my screen?
Yeah. Let me get out of this quickly.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I saw there was okay, there we go. I saw there was a couple of questions there in the question thing from Rocco. So what was the content your agency created? So I wrote, in the space of 2 years, I think I wrote 18 fairly detailed either ebooks or guides that were highly focused on specific topics within social media. And those were behind a registration wall. And I stopped marketing the business. I decided I'm not doing any marketing of the agency. I will only market my marketing. So all of our energy, all of our marketing budgets and resources were focused around either promoting downloads of the ebook and marketing the ebook. The event, we always had an event following an ebook where we had a panel or a discussion on the topic of the ebook. And I invested quite heavily in doing surveys. When I say invested from a time perspective, because surveys are generally pretty easy. But we did I remember just at the end of my agency journey, we did a social media crisis readiness survey. So how ready are you for the impending social media crisis that is coming your way eventually? We targeted risk officers at all of the listed businesses and, every business that would potentially have a risk officer, we targeted them. And it was singularly the most successful sales tactic we had, because everyone had to register to respond. And then they basically told us what they had and what they didn't have. So they like, do you have a social media risk policy for your employees? No. Do you think you should have one? Yes. hello? Like, if you can't close that, you're in trouble, right? And so we had great success running surveys, but you find it interesting. Creating the content is difficult. Marketing the content is an art form, and it takes a while to get good at it. But it generally, there's a lot of different tactics. As I say, we focused on ebooks and surveys. Oh, there we go. Okay, Carolina, you also about the transactional content. That was kind of similar. There are a lot of tactics around transactional content. The advice I would give everyone is to understand the difference between signal and noise. And so you don't want everyone to see your transactional content. You just want the right people to see it. And you want them to, like, people are doom scrolling on their phones through LinkedIn and Facebook or whatever. You want them to stop, hit their brakes and go back and go, what was that? Right? And if it is something so hyper relevant to them, their role or whatever it is, they will stop and they will engage. Right. So it could be download a guide to this or whatever it is, or register for a webinar. You know, I'm talking to my customer about how we solve this problem, whatever. But you want a high signal. You don't want noise. You don't want to be throwing content into the abyss. You want to create a high frequency, almost like a dog whistle, that only those people hear it, and it's like deafening to them. And if you get that right, and it can be so hyper specific, because once you've got their interest and their details, you can broaden the conversation. So you can start on something super, super specific. And if you get an opportunity, if that leads to an opportunity to talking to them, you can then like bring in the cavalry. You can go, oh, we also do this, and we also do this, and we also do this. So the idea is to start the conversation, and often a really kind of specific topic to your target audience will work way better.
Craig, one question that came up in the chat from Emily. What's your advice to someone who's super early in their journey, like 2 clients early, and wants to build that credibility?
Do charity work if you have time. So if you've only got 2 clients, I assume that you do have time. Credibility comes from the person who's referring you. And so what you do is you go within your industry, or within the reasonable reach of your network that you have, who is the highest profile person that has a charity, who has a charity. So it'll be like the CEO of a Fortune 500 company has a private charity that they do for something that's close to their heart. You get hold of them and you go, hey, listen, like, I'm a XYZ person. You know, I believe strongly in the charity, and I would love to be, you know, I'm happy to volunteer my time. I'd still like to do it like a client work, but it'll just be paid. So I'll commit $10,000 of work for the year, and we'll create X, Y, and Z. And often you will then get like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation recommendation. You know, you'll get like a high profile, well-known name recommendation, but it's for a charity. But that's okay. Like, it doesn't matter. It's for their personal charity. That person's still recommending you, right? And they will take you into their networks as well. So it's funny. Like I did a lot of things right in my career, but there was a phone call in my second year of business from a very high profile South African, like a South African billionaire, tech billionaire, who'd sold his business for like $1 billion or something back in the late 90s. And he phoned me up and said, hey, listen, he'd heard that I was doing good work, and can I help him with something? And I traded off that guy's name for years. Like, you know, I mean, I went to town, like anyone who knew who he was, I was like, yeah, like I do all of Mark Shuttleworth's PR. And people are like, oh, wow, okay, that's fantastic. Like that. And, you know, it opens a lot of doors.
That was really helpful. One more that wasn't in the Q&A box. This one actually came from Eleanor in our team, because I think she found it really interesting. You talked about leads, and you also talked about knowing your worth and being willing to lose a pitch. How do you go and look at qualifying leads as they come in?
Qualifying leads is the hardest thing that you ever have to do, because getting leads is fairly easy. I mean, leads is a name and an email address of a relevant person. But if they don't know who you are, and they haven't expressed an interest or a need in what you deliver, then leave them alone. Like that's not fair. Just like stay out of their way, right? Getting qualified leads, generally the best way to do it is to get them to express an interest or a need. And that's why I was saying, when you invest in transactional content, and if you are marketing your content and getting it far and wide, it's giving someone the opportunity, or a potential client the opportunity, to go put their hand up and go, hey, like, that's quite interesting. I'm interested in this piece of content. The content itself is the introduction to you and your agency. So them, if they complete a survey, when you complete the final results and you email that PDF to them, that's your brand. That's representing your work. And if they go, oh, wow, this is a really good PDF, like, they're going to get to know you. So ultimately, it's, qualifying leads is the ultimate thing in marketing, right? How do I get them to know who I am? And how do I get them to express a need? And the easiest way to do it is to get them to do the work, because otherwise you're just going to be shouting and shouting and shouting at a list of 1 million email addresses, and you'll go blue in the face. But if you have 5 people download an ebook, and all 5 of them are like, hey, can we talk? Like, this is very interesting. Can we chat? Like, that's far more valuable.
Got it. We're going to just do 2 more questions, because there's a ton coming in and there's so many good ideas, but we got to sign off at some point. So we'll do 2 more. One from Andrew that was written in is, you talked a lot about, even just now recently, about finding those highly skilled individuals and how you prize them. What's your strategy to go out and find those people that are highly skilled?
Okay. It's difficult. Like, I'm not even going to lie. Like, it's difficult. Like, we all know this. I mean, me saying it's easy, everyone would just, I'd lose my credibility. It's difficult. What I can tell you is that, when I said about that kind of that always be upgrading, that leveling up thing, there were the 2 biggest things that helped us attract talent. Let me say 3. The first was pre-existing talent. So when we went out of our way and we hired the best creative director we possibly could, who earned like way more than we'd ever paid in a salary ever. It was probably like double the next person's salary. And like, we were shaking and quaking. But when we hired him, it became unbelievably easy to hire people below him, because there were so many people in the industry that wanted to work for him. People were like, oh, this guy's won all these awards and he's been Cannes, Grand Prix, and et cetera, et cetera. And so we hired this guy who was himself a magnet for really good talent. So talented people want to work with other talented people. So if you can get one, then you often start attracting more. And then the business itself, it's like, oh, wow, this is a place that has really talented people. I want to be there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is clients, right? Most people, and if I limit this to kind of the creative side of the industry, most individuals want the brand name more than your agency name. So there's very few agencies on here that carry enough weight for someone to go, oh, I used to work at blah, 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 right? Like, but someone wants to be able to go, I worked on Coca-Cola, or I worked on Google, or I worked on this client, or, I worked on that client, right? That the individual, these highly skilled people, the highly talented creatives, they want those brand scalps. And so you kind of, and that's why I said it's quite difficult, because you want the brands on your books to attract the people, but you need the people to attract the brands. So again, as I said, it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. And then the third thing is culture. And I spent way too many years thinking that culture was like a table tennis table and that kind of stuff. Generally, the most critical parts of culture are rewarding excellence, rewarding skill, and having a culture in a business that allows talented people to grow and to learn and to improve and obviously to earn more. But ultimately, every talented person wants to test themselves and challenge and push themselves. And you have to have a culture that rewards that and encourages that and allows it.
That was a great answer. Yeah, again, even a lot to unpack there, but I think it's a really strong point. Particularly the first one seemed really apt to me too. Like, because I know from my past, like, you see people on LinkedIn or your people in your network, and you're like, I want to work there. So it's just about building that culture and having people that everyone else wants to work with. It's going to attract the right talents.
I think one person. It was literally like in the early days, it was one person, and we built out an entire creative team of highly talented people.
Craig, I can't take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for joining. This was amazing. Such great content.
Eleanor's put my email address and my Calendly link in the chat. So if anyone wants to email me, if you want to book a time to chat to me, like there's my Calendly. It's set up for SA time zones. So if you can't find anything suitable, email me and then I'll make something available outside of normal hours.
That's amazing. That's generous. Yeah, take advantage of that, everybody. And as far as the next call, I don't know if we can top this one, but we have a call coming up next month with Amanda Milligan, who's absolutely fantastic, and the head of marketing at Stacker Studio. We're going to focus on, or Amanda's going to focus on walking you through how to create content that publishers love. Not just strategically, which Amanda is excellent at and has showed time and time again, but using insights from the top 500 most syndicated stories. So it's gonna be a great call from someone who walks the walk and talks the talk, and has used data to back that up. So make sure you sign up for that call as well. Craig, thank you again for joining us, and everyone listening, and thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time.
It's an absolute pleasure. Guys, thank you very much. Good luck on your journeys.